but as and when you have any question, just type it out in the chat, and when I finish the deck and the demo, we'll just kind of go through all the questions one by one. So quick introduction about me. Uh, I got introduced to Salesforce in 2007. This phrase, married to Salesforce since 2007, was coined by my wife. I actually got married a couple of years before that, but uh, yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time with Salesforce, probably more than the time I spend with her. So she says that I'm married to Salesforce. I am a Salesforce MVP. I became an MVP 5 years back. I used to be a certified technical instructor. I used to teach Commerce Cloud classes for administrators and developers in the Asia Pacific and the Australia New Zealand regions. One of the things which I became fascinated with last year was the Salesforce Einstein platform, and they have a champions program for a number of offerings. So I became a Einstein champion last year. And then since I've been around for a very long time, when I started off, I remember there were only 3 certifications. Now there are 34 of them. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of gradually working through uh, uh, um, a number of them. Some of the areas which I'm not very strong at are marketing Pardot, so that's a bridge which I hope to cross someday. But other than that, I've kind of had some good experience on the platform. I work as a Chief Technology Officer at MTX Group. It's a technology company based out of Dallas. We have another office in New York and a couple of offices in India, Hyderabad and Jaipur. And we are a Salesforce and a Mulesoft partner. So yeah, I did have a small slide. I think we have kind of done an intro, but this is a slide or some sort of variation of these slides I typically use in my decks. I know we had a couple of developers here. If you want, you can just type it out if you are a developer here, so that I know who are the developers in the house, and I can see that. Right. Yeah, so developers are typically a species who always claim it's not a bug, it's a feature. That's how we are trained. That's a part of our education, and that has kind of been my line of defense for the last 20 odd years as well. So if you are a developer and if you have not used it, that's a clue for you to use it. I don't think there are any designers, but yeah, designers typically like to talk in terms of styles and style sheets and CSS. And thanks to the lockdown, I don't know a lot about others, but definitely, I mean, my style is obese now. My width and overflows are not really what I would want them to be. And I see there are a lot of administrators here. So administrators are typically folks, if the developers and the designers don't get their act right, then the administrators are frustrated and the clients are frustrated. And we've all seen projects go haywire. So that's not something anybody wants. So with that, let me actually come to Commerce Cloud. So before I actually dig in, and as I said, I mean, if I were to ask, and I said that I want this to be a very interactive session. So I'll ask a couple of questions, and then you feel free to type out your questions in the chat, and we'll field them towards the end. But if I were to ask a simple question of you, is Commerce Cloud a B2C offering, a B2B offering, or both? Anybody wants to answer that? You can take a guess if you're not sure. I mean, there are only 3 options.
Both.
It's both.
Okay. Anybody thinks otherwise?
Is it B2C?
Okay. So we'll come to that in a minute or so. So the idea is these are 2 very different facets of e-commerce, and I'll talk about them in a couple of slides. Some interesting statistics here, and again, I presented a session at Dreamforce and with one of the product managers from the Commerce Cloud team, and he shared these statistics that we are in a world where more than 50% of global e-commerce traffic, not just Salesforce, but in general, comes from mobile, and this includes tablets as well. There has been 100% annual growth in social commerce, which means either you are ordering through, you're looking up products on a social media website, somebody recommended something there, and that has kind of played into your buying decisions. More than 50% in-store sales influenced by digital. You typically search a product online and you try and visit the store if you can get a better discount. And then 25% purchases span multiple touch points, which essentially means you probably saw the product first on your desktop computer. You're probably searching for it again on your watch, and then finally you made the transaction using either your phone, or you went to a kiosk, or you visited the store. So commerce is kind of changing, and it's heavily focused towards mobile, and it's becoming more accessible. Um, B2B versus B2C. So a lot of people do not actually understand the difference, and I kind of sense that it's similar in this group. When we talk about Commerce Cloud, we are actually not talking about both platforms. When we say Commerce Cloud, it's an offering which was earlier called Demandware. It was a company that Salesforce acquired in 2016. uh, Before that, that company was called Intershop long back. But when Salesforce acquired it, it was called Demandware. Uh, and since Salesforce typically does rename a number of products that they acquire, for example, Steelbrick became CPQ and so on and so forth. Exact Target became Marketing Cloud. So what they did was they renamed Demandware to be Salesforce Commerce Cloud. It was abbreviated as SFCC as well. And that went well. And then they actually acquired, this was a pure B2C place. So when I say a B2C play, imagine Amazon, where you are actually buying products directly from a business. You are the end customer in this case. But what happened in 2018 was Salesforce acquired another company which was called CloudCraze. CloudCraze was a B2B play. A B2B play means essentially you as a business are selling to another business, which in turn will sell to end customers. Amazon again is an example of B2B as well, because distributors typically list their products on Amazon. Dealers buy those products, and then dealers sell those products to you, and you are the end customer. So the clear segregation is B2C commerce, earlier called Demandware, earlier called Salesforce Commerce Cloud, is the B2C offering. CloudCraze, B2B offering, is called B2B commerce as well. And when we talk about Commerce Cloud, it's still the same term, which was SFCC, or the Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So it is actually referring to B2C commerce. It's not referring to both. That's a common misconception. Again, if somebody says Commerce Cloud, it's generally a B2C commerce play that they are talking about. So let's talk a little bit about architecture. And overall, what Salesforce has done is they've kind of standardized the architecture to be similar to the other products that they have. So at the bottom layer, you have the platform operations layer, which is essentially all the infrastructure. And then on top of that, you have the data model. So similar to the data model that you have in the core Salesforce platform, where you have, can anyone tell me any objects that you have in the core Salesforce data model? Any objects, any 5 objects? Just any 5 objects from the core Salesforce data model.
Count,
Mhm.
opportunity,
Mhm. Any others?
Order,
Products?
Right.
order, products,
Mhm.
contacts. Okay.
Contacts, leads, yeah, several of them. So similarly, the idea is that Commerce Cloud has its own data model, and typically the entities are what you can think of in terms of a typical um e-commerce business transaction. So if you, what do you do on an e-commerce site? You buy products. So there is a product there. How do you buy those products? You typically put them in cart. So there would be a cart there. That's a part of an order. So again, there is a lot of there are a lot of objects there. So I will actually do a quick walkthrough when we come to the demo part. Above that, there is a layer called Commerce Cloud Einstein. What Salesforce has done really well is after they launched Einstein as a standalone product, they realized that it's probably not going to work this way. So what they did was they integrated Einstein into almost all of their product offerings. So if you are using Marketing Cloud, it has a Marketing Cloud Einstein connector. If you are using Service Cloud, it has a Service Cloud Einstein connector. What it does, it brings the power of artificial intelligence to your specific cloud offering. So specifically in case of Commerce Cloud, product recommendations, what's a product recommendation? If I buy a specific product, then based on my purchase history, or based on my patterns, buying patterns, the platform should be able to predict what am I going to buy next. Predictive email, again, it's basically enticing the user based on their buying history or based on certain patterns on what the user might want to buy, and sending them an email with some discounts or just telling them that there are deals on products that might interest you. And again, these solutions are not just for digital, these are used for stores as well. And then there is a layer of integration, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail in one of the subsequent slides, so that you can interface with a number of external systems. So when we talk about Commerce Cloud, you have a lot of external systems. So typically your products would be coming from another system which is called product information management module, or you might be using a external payment gateway which is used to complete the order. So again, there is a very well built API layer that takes care of all of that, and above that is obviously all the mediums. So for example, I can order through my phone, I can walk into a store, I can do it from my desktop, I can call a call center, I can do it through a kiosk, number of other ways. So let's talk a little bit about physical architecture. So in terms of the overall architecture, again, similar to Salesforce, and you can draw parallels between Commerce Cloud and Salesforce here. Like Salesforce has a number of data centers. So again, a question for you. Anytime you log into an org, you typically see something like an NA1 or a EU7 or something like that. What is that? Can somebody tell me?
That's an
Instance, they call
instance.
That is the instance. So that is the instance on which you are logged in. So similar to those instances, we have what we call as pods. These refer to point of delivery. So Commerce Cloud has a number of pods, again, mostly in America region and in European region. So a pod is analogous to an instance that you have in the Salesforce world. These pods are then split into what we call as realm. So a realm is a logical segregation for a customer. So for example, if Nike is a customer, if Puma is a customer, they will, each one of them will have their own realms, which are logical segregation. So Nike would only see the data related to Nike, Puma would only see data related to Puma, and so on and so forth. So based on what I just described, realm, can someone tell me what is the analogous term in Salesforce? What would be equivalent to a realm in Salesforce?
Territory, maybe?
Category?
Not quite. So let me give you another hint. So typically, if I am a customer, Commerce Cloud customer, I would be logging into my realm, and another customer would be logging
org.
into their
We
realm.
can say org.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes,
org.
that is correct. Yes. So org or organization, that's exactly what is a logical segregation in the world of Salesforce, and in the world of Commerce Cloud, it's actually called realm. Then in similar to how your org, you have multiple instances, like you have a sandbox, you have production, and then you may have staging. Here also we have a number of instances. We have a development instance, we have a staging instance, we have a production instance, which we club together and call as primary instance group. And then we have up to 5 sandboxes, which we call as secondary instance group. So the idea is that your developers would typically do all the development on these sandboxes. They would push their changes to a staging environment. Here, there is a slight difference from Salesforce in the sense that the development environment, the name development is a misnomer. It's actually the QA environment. So once the data is on staging, it is pushed to development for QA. And once the QA gives their blessings, it is moved to production. So that's the overall life cycle. So as I said, I mean, with time, the Commerce Cloud architecture has gradually moved from heavy desktop-oriented architecture to a more flexible architecture which supports smartphones, tablets, and smaller resolution devices as well. So what I'm trying to show on this slide is again based on a statistic that I pulled. There are more mobile phones on this earth than there are tablets. There are more tablets on planet Earth than there are laptops. And there are more laptops on planet Earth than there are desktops. So again, no surprises that almost all the consumer systems and a lot of enterprise systems are moving towards mobiles and tablets because that is where the volume is. So in case you need to check all the boxes, it is necessary that your solutions run well on smartphones and tablets. Um, Some important statistics, and again, these kind of lay the groundwork for a broader discussion on Commerce Cloud and understanding some of the key concepts. So some statistics that I pulled from a third-party survey site. 57% users would not recommend a business with a bad mobile site to anybody else. 40% would turn to a competitor site if the site wasn't providing a good mobile experience. And 23% adults would curse on their phone and use adjectives which I cannot use here when the site doesn't work. And I'm sure we have all done that at some point of time in our lives. So let me talk about a little bit about from a historical perspective. When the company was still called Demandware, and before it had been acquired, it came up with an architecture which was called Site Genesis. So Genesis, as we know, is it's a literally it means that evolution of something, and Site Genesis was meant to be the evolution of e-commerce sites. So it followed a legacy MVC architecture, and again, a question here and more towards the architects in the room. Can anyone tell me what MVC is?
Model view controller.
Okay, excellent. Can you describe briefly what MVC means?
So I think your slide is self-explanatory. I'll probably be repeating it, like the background, the front end, the back end, and all the logic that is involved in basically dishing out the data from the back end to the front end.
Okay. Anybody else wants to add anything to that? I think there was one more person who was an architect, Raju, probably, if you want to add something.
Say that, yeah. MVC is more of a model where you can how to retrieve the data from the database and show it to the front end. So the backend we call the database the backend, and the front end, whatever is mobile front end or the website, we call as a view layer. The model layer is the database layer, and the controller, which is the main logic to retrieve the data to the front end. So how you design the controller is the smartness of the person who developed the site.
Sure. I think, yeah, both great answers. Yeah. So just to touch upon briefly, model is your abstraction of the database, view is the presentation layer, and controller is the business logic. The problem with the earlier architecture of Site Genesis was that um, the view layer were using templates. It uses a framework called ISML. It's a proprietary framework. It stands for Internet Store Markup Language. It is a markup language. It uses templates. The idea is that you write certain templates, and then at runtime, based on what data the user is requesting, these get converted into dynamic HTML. The problem here was that the models were not a true representation of data. We had a very proprietary architecture. There were something called demandware scripts, which were kind of also representing models, so not really a true architecture. And then the worst part was that there was no separation of concern. So when we talk about MVC, the overall objective is that there has to be clear separation of concerns. If those are not there, developers like to take shortcuts, which kind of screws up the overall architecture of the solution, and which typically leads to performance issues. And it was possible to do a lot of that with the earlier architecture in Site Genesis. This is what a Site Genesis site looked like. I'll show you a quick demo when we come to the demo part as well. But the idea was that this was an architecture which kind of stood the test of time for several years, but it was not a futuristic architecture. So what Salesforce did when they acquired Demandware was they started looking for ways to kind of modernize the overall architecture. And one of the things which they thought they should do is, again, which they are doing with the core platform as well, is moving away from moving away from proprietary technologies and moving to more open source technologies. So for example, if you talk about Salesforce, they are using something called Lightning Web Components, which is pure JavaScript, pure CSS, using HTML, trying to move away from Visual Force. And the thought process here was similar, that let's actually make a conscious effort to move away from demandware scripts, ISML templates. That's how this architecture called SFRA was born. Again, a little bit of history there. The SFRA abbreviation actually means storefront reference architecture. Again, the idea is that it's a reference architecture if you want to build a site on B2C commerce. Then rather than building your own architecture and kind of reinventing the wheel, you start with a baseline architecture which is available to you. Interestingly, when they came up with this architecture first, it was not called SFRA, it was called MFRA. The idea was it is mobile first reference architecture, but it kind of gave a ambiguous representation that it is heavily focused on mobile and there are no other changes when compared to site genesis. So they kind of changed the name again and called it storefront reference architecture, which is a more generic name. The idea is that it's a mobile first user experience. So if you are accessing a website, a commerce cloud website built on SFRA, it will give you a first class citizen experience, whether you are on a smartphone, whether you are on a tablet, whether you are on a laptop, or whether you are on a desktop computer. How did they do this? They picked some of the best practices from 2000 top customer stores built on the Site Genesis framework. And then they helped them migrate to this new architecture. And in the process, they kind of evolved this architecture and standardized it. As compared to Site Genesis, it allows rapid customization and seamless updates. Again, from a high level, the overall architecture remains similar. At the infrastructure layer, you have the trusted Salesforce platform, which again is multi-tenant, which is scalable, which is certified in terms of security, and which is again has a very high SLA in terms of the overall reliability. And I'll show you a demo of SFRA as well. But from a architecture perspective, what really changed was that there was now a true separation of concern. So your models, your views, your controllers, they were exactly doing what they are supposed to do. And this kind of forced developers to follow the architecture, write code which adheres to these layers in the MVC architecture, and no more shortcuts, which means better performing websites, less performance issues. This is what a SFRA site looks like. And again, as I said, I'll show you both the sites, a Site Genesis site and a SFRA site. Yeah, so I think let me actually jump to the demo. So let me first show you what a typical...
Hey, Gaurav.
Yep.
Can I interrupt you and ask you a question about the architecture?
Sure.
So maybe I missed, maybe not, but I was paying attention. The SFRA architecture, is it distributed, but that's the right way to ask this question. When we make a transaction in e-commerce, does it go all the way to Salesforce, or does it go to like a remote instance of Salesforce running, which is like closer to the storefront?
Okay, so that's a great question. So when you talk about Salesforce, I presume you mean B2C commerce. So because
Correct.
yeah, when we say Salesforce, so one thing which I want to clarify is nothing here has anything to do with the core Salesforce platform. We have actually not even talked about core Salesforce here. B2C commerce is a completely separate product. It does integrate with Salesforce, but from a technology standpoint, from a use case standpoint, it is a completely separate product. So now coming to your question, so depending on how your site is architected, that request may or may not go to the nearest server. So for example, if I were to draw parallels again, you can create applications which are multi-org. Similarly, you can create sites which span across multiple pods. But again, in general, you would localize sites based on specific geography. And again, taking some examples, Puma is one of the kind of poster boys of Commerce Cloud customers. So if Puma has a site in US, it would typically be puma.us. If they have a site in India, it would typically be puma.in. They may be running the same code base, but again, they would be physically located differently. So if I'm accessing that site from India, I would probably be redirected to puma.in. And if you're accessing it from the US, you would typically be redirected to puma.us. Does that answer your question?
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
What I missed out, and thank you for clarifying, what you said is depending on how it's architected, it may or may not end up in the core Salesforce. I think that already answered it, but thank you for that.
Correct. All right, so this is what a site genesis site looks like. And if you were to do some comparisons, let me actually open Amazon. So you would see that the kind of user experience that you have here versus the kind of user experience you have here. And again, I mean, no comparisons, but this is just a demo site. But let me actually show you how you used to navigate a site genesis. So I would typically, these are called categories. So I have new arrivals, women's, men's, electronics, top sellers. I have a search bar on the top left. I have an icon, which is Commerce Cloud, essentially takes me to the home page every time. I have a banner here. I have some promotions. And at the bottom, I have some static text. Okay. And on the top right, I have some icons. So locate stores, login, register, view cart. And then I have a search box here as well. So what I have here, these are called categories. If I drill down further, these are called subcategories. So let me actually go to televisions. When I go to televisions, okay, this site is currently going through some maintenance, so I'll probably come back to it. So let me show you a parallel SFRA site. So again, if you were to compare these in terms of user experience, let me actually show you how this would look like on a mobile device. So if I launch my developer tools and I emulate, say, let me emulate an iPhone X. So it kind of works, but the overall experience is not what I would expect. And let me now show you a typical SFRA site. So this is what an SFRA site looks like. And the first thing that you'll notice that from a user experience perspective, this is much more responsive, much more user friendly, and a very rich experience in terms of how things are being shown. And again, if I were to do the same things, let me go to a category and then a subcategory. So electronics is my category, televisions is my subcategory. And then what it does is it shows me a tracking consent, which is basically thanks to GDPR that this site has cookies, and I am okay with storing my information in cookies. And once I do that, it shows me a header image, and then it shows me a number of products. So what this page is called is it's showing me a listing of products. So it's typically called a product listing page, also abbreviated as PLP. So anytime you come across a PLP in any documentation, you know that it is a listing of products. What it does is shows typically a banner image of a product, the name of the product, price of a product, and certain information like typically we show rating. On the left side, we have what we call a search refinement. So what I want to see here is the various categories. How would I like to refine my search? Typically based on price, based on brand, based on size, or based on type. And then I can view more products, and then so on and so forth. If I click on any of these products, it takes me to a page where I can see all the details of this specific product, which is now then called a product detail page, also called as a PDP. So again, anytime you hear a term called PDP, you know that it's a product detail page. What it does show is more details about that specific product that the user is trying to access. And these are all, so this is an instance in EU. They typically do some maintenance on these pods over the weekend. So that may be the reason that some of the performance is slow. But now that this page has loaded, I can see a number of a lot of information here, like the full product name, some of the images of this product. And then I can actually add this product to my cart. I can also choose supplementary products, like if I want warranty or not. And then attributes, description, details. I can share this product on social. Let me actually add it to my cart. Once I do that, it should start showing me a number here that I have another product in my cart. And again, as I said, this is a little slow because this specific pod may be undergoing some maintenance. But the idea is that you should be able to add products. So for example, it shows me product added to cart. And if I hover over here and I click here, I can see that this product has been added and I can actually check out this product as well. And when I try to check out, it asks me whether I have a promo code, who doesn't love discounts, and what kind of shipping do I want to choose. Again, very basic e-commerce flow that we've all done as end users as well on a number of sites. And then when I do checkout, it actually prompts me that I'm not logged into this site. So what I can also do is I can log in, I can register, or I can do a checkout as guest. So just to keep things simple, let me do checkout as guest. If I do that, it will ask me for a bunch of information like what is my address, what is my payment method. And based on all of that, yeah, so here it shows my order summary, all the details that it needs. And then once I provide that, all the information, it will actually take me to the payment flow. So some interesting things that I can see here. Let me actually go back to the home page. So in e-commerce, we have a term called, in commerce, we have a term called window shoppers. And in e-commerce, we have a term called surgical shoppers. Surgical shoppers are people who know exactly what they need. They just want to buy that product. They are not really interested in looking at other products. So surgical shoppers are typically people who would come onto a site and they would actually search for a product. And based on the product that they'll see, they'll go to the product detail page directly. They will not go to categories, subcategories. They found the product that they need, they'll add it to the cart, boom, checkout and done. So that's why they are surgical in their approach, unlike window shoppers who would typically go to categories, subcategories, go to multiple sites. So that's another paradigm that we typically use in the e-commerce world. So let me go back again. One other thing which I want to show, and this may be more useful for admins, developers, not so much for architects, but when you've built a site and you actually want to troubleshoot certain issues, or you want to see where is certain information coming from. So there is something on the top left which we call as storefront toolkit. And when I click on this, there are a number of options that I see. So for example, one of the options I see is content information. And when I hover over this page, it actually shows me that this particular image is probably something called content. Again, this is some content. So this is something that administrators would be expected to do. They can actually create content. They can use this interface to edit contents, edit products, and edit a lot of information. This is similar to the overall low code approach that Salesforce has, that you need not write code for everything. There are a number of things that you can do through the point and click framework as well. So again, as a principle, Commerce Cloud follows the same philosophy as well. There is something called page information. And when I do that, you will see that it shows me a lot of information. It shows me certain templates. It shows me certain controllers. This is more of an advanced concept when you are doing B2C commerce development. If I want to look at the corresponding template for this header, I would just click on this template and it would show me that template. And similarly, there would be a corresponding controller and a template for pretty much everything. Okay. There's one more thing I can look at is cache. Can anyone tell me what is cache in terms of any web application? Why do we need cache? What is cache?
It is a pixel that's stored on the computer to as a memory of the site.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else who wants to give another answer?
There are two levels of cache. Probably I think the what we mentioned before was probably browser cache, but there is a server-side cache as well, where to get the information quicker, the same site will be used by multiple users. So if the server is sitting somewhere else and the customers are, say example, this site is US-based site, and then customers are accessing from UK, there is a way of caching that near location as well, so that the content will be served quicker to the end users based on their geolocation.
Correct.
So that is called server-side caching.
Yeah. So again, both great answers. Yeah. Shiva, what you described is typically client-side cache, and I think it was Raju. I can't see who answered that, but yeah, what he described was the server-side cache. So this typically shows us what the server-side cache is. So if I were to choose this option, it would actually show these little icons there. And if I go to the top and if I hover over any specific icon, it actually shows me that if a specific portion of the page is cached or not cached. So for example, there is certain portion that this is cached, this is not cached. And then the best part is there is a lot of flexibility within the same page. You can actually have a lot of portion which is cached. You can have portions which are cached for different amount of time, and then you can also have portions which are not cached. So if you look clearly, there are certain icons where this is actually crossed out, and this is typically, it is meaning it is not cached. So this is my cart and it is not cached. Uh, can anyone tell me why it's a bad idea to cache the cart? Why it's not cached?
Is it because it keeps changing until the order is finalized?
That is correct. Yeah. So you would not want to cache something like a cart, because a user can always add and delete items from their cart, and it is volatile. It can change anytime before they check out. So that's cache. And then there's something called request log. Again, if you are a developer, it shows a typical Java stack trace, a little bit more advanced concept. So I'll spare that for now. Search information. So typically used by merchants, again, slightly more advanced. So let me, and then site preview. This is an important one, that you can actually emulate, more for admins, that you can emulate specific groups. So for example, if you want to see what the site looks like for a big spender, like somebody who's spending a lot of time on the site making orders, somebody like an Amazon Prime customer, everyone as a normal user, a registered user, or a guest user. You can also do some A/B testing here based on certain criteria that you can set up, and you can set up your own test segment. So a lot of information that you can do. And again, if I show this specific site on what it looks like on a smartphone or a tablet, you'll see that this is a pure uh, first class experience on a phone. So let me actually go to a specific product. So regardless of which specific page I am on, this gives a true mobile experience. So for example, everything is well organized as cards, what we call as typically in mobile development. And then if I go to a product detail, again, all the information is laid out. I have markers on either side of the image that I can use. I can see all the information. The add to cart button is always available to me. So small things like that. And again, if I were to change this instead of a phone, if I were to choose a tablet, again, it's all a first class citizen experience on a tablet as well. Okay, so this is from an end user perspective. Let me actually log in and show you what it looks like for developers, admins, and uh, architects. So I'll just log into my into my sandbox, and again, equivalent to how you log in into your Salesforce orgs, I'm now logging into my sandbox. So this interface which I see here is typically called Business Manager. Every time I log in, it actually shows me what is the latest release that I am on. So can anyone tell me what are the 3 releases on Salesforce every year? Very simple. Anybody who's not answered so far, I want to make sure you're awake, alive.
Spring, winter, and summer.
Okay, thank you. So Salesforce has kind of done that for other products as well. So the conventions are a little different. So for example, here it says 20.4. What this means is the first number here is the year. So for example, we are in 2020, definitely an year which nobody will forget thanks to coronavirus. And then .4 here is referring to the month. So this was a release which was done in April, uh, which was the 4th month. And I'll just skip this. So it's showing me that what all changed. These are short release notes that you can see every time just to understand what has changed since the last time. And then this interface is what we call as a business manager interface. It's also abbreviated as BM. It shows me an option to select a site. So for example, here I have reference architecture, which is my SFRA site. So once I select this, and once I've selected this, and I can actually see what all options are available to me from a, so when it says merchant tools, it is essentially things that a merchant is typically somebody who would configure products, categories, pricing. It is also something that an administrator on B2C commerce sites would do. So if you are an admin, you would mostly focus on this option. If you are a developer or an architect, although it says administration, there is a lot of stuff that you would do here. And if I click on storefront, it would just launch the site and show me what it looks like from a end user perspective. And this is exactly the page that I had shown you. So let me actually show you merchant tools first. So as I said, this is a lot of information that merchants or admins would typically do. So what do I have here? I have customers. So if I want to see who are the customers who are already registered on my site, what are the products that I have on my site? So for example, on the end page, I was seeing a number of products, right? If I want to see all of those on the back end, as an administrator or as an architect, I can actually see it here. And if I want to search for a specific product, so for example, I did search for a laptop there. If I want to see what it looks like in my data model, then I see that I have two of these products. I have a laptop messenger and I have a laptop briefcase with wheels. Let me actually click on that laptop briefcase with wheels and let's see what all it contains. So this, what I'm now looking at is the actual product structure, and I'm looking at what are the attributes or what are the fields in that product. So it typically has a catalog, it is searchable or not searchable, it has a name, brand, a lot of information, images that we have provided, whether that product is online or offline. So if I make it offline, you'll not be able to search for it, information for SEO, and then a number of tabs on the top which kind of control uh, several aspects of this. So for example, are there variations of this product? So typically variations would be for dresses, a size, a color, all of that. So a lot of information that you as a B2C commerce administrator can set on products. And this is a lot of, again, this is a lot of time consuming tasks as well when you need to load products or when you need to load categories. How would you edit a product? You would typically click on this link which says click lock if you need to edit product. Can anyone take a guess as to why they have this feature that I need to lock the product to edit it?
So maybe two people can't edit the same product at the same time.
Great
and
answer.
Pricing is different. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't want me and somebody else. I'm basically setting the product price to $100, and then Shiba comes and sets it to $5, and I end up losing $95 on the product. That is not something I would want. So I would typically lock the product, and it says the product has been logged. Click unlock to release. Let's say I just want to change something here. I would then save this particular product. I'll click apply. And once I've done that, I would need to make sure that I unlock this product so that others can actually go and edit that product as needed. Otherwise, they will still get a warning or an error that this product is being edited by Gaurav. It is locked by Gaurav, so they'll not be able to edit it. Okay, so a little bit about products.
Good question. It's like an auto lock, or you have to lock it kind of thing. For example, like I forget to touch that button. Because I see some lot of softwares when you start editing it automatically, the other person, like for example, like you come in and edit it, you get automatic notification, or do you need to press that button?
Yeah, so the answer is right there on the screen. If I don't lock it, you can see that everything here is grayed out.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Even if I want, I cannot edit everything, and all the buttons here are grayed out as well. So they only become active if I lock the product.
All right, got it. I can just read that.
So again, there are a lot of other things that you can do. You can actually look at what custom objects you have. Similar to Salesforce, again, the objective of custom objects is very similar. Anytime you have a use case where the system objects are not sufficient for that purpose, then you create a custom object. What you can also do here is you can actually add custom fields just as you do it in Salesforce. So for example, if I come here, if I go to objects, I might have disabled a few things here because this is a sandbox that I use. But anyway, you can also add custom fields here. So I will need to do a number of steps to enable that. But yeah, so for example, here I do have a custom object which I had created long back. So if I were to go to something called a custom object editor, this is how I can also create objects from the backend. So for example, if I want to create a product from the backend, let me actually go back to product. That's a better use case. I can actually create a product from here as well. So once I create the product, I set everything, then it will start showing up on my website and I can put it for sale as well. Okay, that is the idea here. And as I said, there are a lot of other things, campaigns, promotions, content slots. Search is obviously a very key aspect of any e-commerce site. So you can actually set a lot of information related to searching. So one thing which I can potentially show you is recommendations. And again, as I said, earlier, it used to be very difficult to I had to create these recommendations manually. So let me show you an example. But now a lot of this is taken care of by Einstein. So I can just come in and I can configure Einstein. But earlier, what I had to do was I had to assign recommendations. I had to order them. It was a lot of manual work. But now it is all being handled through Einstein. So again, a lot of other information, SEO, you can actually define your keywords, you can define meta tags. So anybody searches for a laptop bag after Amazon, I want my site. So I can specify a lot of SEO parameters, which would make my site crawler friendly so that it helps index it more easily. And then administration. So this is something which, as I said, is more relevant. Although it says administration, it is more relevant to developers. A lot of things that they would do here. So for example, if I want to look at the data model, so I want to actually see what does the product structure actually look like. So I will come here, I will go to attribute definitions, and this shows me all the attributes that a product has. So earlier when I was in merchant tools, it was actually showing me the product data. Now it is showing me the product structure. So if I talk about in database terms, now it's showing me what we call as DDL or data definition language. And earlier I was seeing what we typically call as the data. And then if I have a number of sites, I can actually do some site operations. I can take sites offline. I can do a bunch of things. I can configure cache. I can configure locales, a lot of other things as well. And then a lot of operational features that are available. I can actually profile my code typically to look at performance issues. I can schedule jobs to do some scheduled operations. A lot of other things I can do as well. Replication, I can move my code and data between environments. From my sandbox, I can move it to staging. From staging, I can move it to production, development, and so on and so forth. So this is what an interface typically looks like. If you want to look at B2C commerce documentation, go to the site called, no, I don't want to go to B2B site, B2C commerce developer center. And it would take you to this specific site, which is kind of an all, this is the old one. This one is for B2B. It's called B2C commerce. I think it's not indexed yet, and I don't have it bookmarked here, but I can definitely share that link in an email. It's a like a one-stop reference site where you can see all the information. Yeah, this is still pointing to the old site.
And
but
Gaurav,
yeah,
this
again,
is Yeah, quick question on this one. This is like targeted towards very big companies like Best Buy, that kind of bigger companies, or even for smaller mid-sized businesses too?
Yeah, so that's again a good question because B2C commerce typically is an enterprise play. I actually have a slide, so let's hold that question for
Okay.
a few minutes, and then I'll talk about the sizing aspect of it as well. Okay, so I think that's a good segue for me to go back to my slides.
Raju has posted a link. I don't know whether that is relevant to what you were.
No, I think I made a mistake. I think what he said was it's old.
Yeah, but again, the look and feel is kind of what is different. Yeah, but this is exactly the site that has everything. What they have done is they've also created a new portal, and I'll just share that as well. So let me just go back to my deck, and I just have a few more slides which I'll cover, and then so how do you learn Commerce Cloud? Obviously, you start small and then you learn incrementally. And the site that I referred, again, that's a good place. One obvious question is, how do you get access to a sandbox? That is the tricky part in Commerce Cloud, and that's where the entry barrier is a little high compared to Salesforce. So Salesforce, it's very easy. You go to Google, you search for Salesforce developer org, sign up, you fill out a form, and you get a developer org, which is free for life for you. Here, it's not so simple. You either need to work for a B2C commerce partner, or you need to attend one of the official trainings that Salesforce conducts on B2C commerce. Once you do that, you get assigned a sandbox, and depending on what kind of a partner you are, that validity of that sandbox may vary. But yeah, I mean, it's the unfortunate part, but that's how it is. They have launched on-demand sandboxes, which are still reserved for partners. They are still trying it out for partners, and they plan to open it up towards the end of this year to general public as well. So similar to how you do it for Salesforce developer orgs right now, you will be able to do it for, hopefully, for B2C sandboxes towards the end of this year. Some case studies, and again, the question was around if B2C is more of an enterprise play, or can you build small and medium sites as well. So some of the sites here are big names, Wolverine, Puma, Echo, but some are not really that big. So the way it works is that unlike Salesforce licensing, or unlike the Salesforce revenue model, Salesforce typically charges customers based on licensing, right? So you have X number of platform licenses, you have X number of Service Cloud licenses. So this is the overall bill of material, and this is what we'll charge you. In contrast to that, what they do with Commerce Cloud is, when you want to build a new site on Commerce Cloud, they don't charge you upfront for anything. They will ask you what is the kind of user base that you expect, whether it's for 1,000 users, 10,000 users, million users, and what is the monthly volume that and monthly revenue that you would generate. And then based on those discussions, they would agree upon a certain number in terms of a revenue commission that they'll take. So for example, if every transaction is $1, they'll probably take 2 cents out of that $1. So in that sense, when your portal or when your site succeeds, in a way, Salesforce is succeeding as well, because their share of the revenue goes up as well. So I have seen a number of sites which are, I would say, moderately small. And then there is no shortage of like sites which are like huge enterprises. And this list is fairly large. So if you want to look at Commerce Cloud customers, just search for that on, and it would actually take you to a page on success stories, customer success stories, and it has more than 100 success stories here. Puma, as I said, it's kind of the poster boy, and then it's a huge list. Adidas, again, a huge customer, and then you can sort it based on specific verticals which you want to look at.
Yeah, but I was just trying to contrast it with Shopify. Shopify is more for the smaller kind of businesses kind of thing, not a like enterprise level thing, and I believe so.
Yeah, so Shopify is not really a competitor for B2C commerce. If I were to draw some comparisons, and apples to apples comparison, that would be B2C commerce versus SAP Hybris versus a Magento Enterprise. Those are in the same category. Shopify, Magento Community Edition, those are all kind of those are kind of lower volume games in that sense.
Right, that's right.
All right, so moving on, one thing lastly which I wanted to cover, what are the certifications in this space? There are 2 certifications on B2C commerce. You can become a B2C commerce certified developer, and you can become a certified B2C commerce architect. For B2B commerce, there is a B2B commerce admin accreditation, a B2B commerce developer accreditation as well. These are called accreditations, but these are similar to certifications, because if you have done any other accreditation from Salesforce, like a health cloud or a financial services cloud, you would typically see that those are not proctored exams. B2B commerce exams, these are proctored. And I'll not try to scare you, but again, all 4 certifications listed here, and I can quote statistics from Salesforce on this. These are 4 of the toughest certifications in the overall Salesforce ecosystem. The number 1 reason for that is you will not find any practice questions. You will not find dumps for these. And you will only clear these certifications if you actually have working experience on these. So this certification right here, Salesforce Certified B2C Commerce Architect, I know a couple of people mentioned that they are CTA aspirants. So there are about 268. I think that was the last number I checked, CTAs in the Salesforce ecosystem. In contrast to that, there are only 57 certified B2C commerce architects. This is how tough it is. And again, it took me several years to do this certification. And again, a few stats around that. In India, there are only 2 people who are certified. I'm one of them, and the other person is actually employed with Salesforce. So that's kind of how tough it is. But again, if you do this, this is like the pinnacle of being in the B2C commerce space. So if you're really interested in this space and you want to become a B2C commerce architect, very well, it's a good avenue, especially with all that's going on around COVID. I think e-commerce has kind of boomed. It has given a new life. So it's definitely a good avenue in terms of career options. Just to recap, Salesforce e-commerce in general is moving to mobile first. I talked about Commerce Cloud. Always remember it's a B2C offering. Site Genesis, SFRA, the 2 architectures, some use cases that we looked at. Exchange was an old portal, which was basically you needed access to it. Again, you would not get access to it unless you were a partner. So the good thing is they've moved away from Exchange and they've made all documentation public. And then this is referring to an introduction page, and I'll share the overall deck with all of you as well, so you can have these links. That kind of brings me to the end of the presentation. Yeah, I'm hoping it kind of helped clear some of the doubts that you had in terms of what is Commerce Cloud, how does it work from a end user perspective, from a customer perspective, and if there are any questions, I can take them now.
Can you comment on the coexistence of B2C commerce with with CPQ, or is that not a very common use case for the large enterprises?
Sure. So that actually is a fairly common use case, because CPQ is all about being able to configure your price books. So the way it happens is once you have actually configured your price books, Commerce Cloud typically pulls in information directly from your price book. So we do not store any pricing information directly within Commerce Cloud. All that actually happens in real time. So whenever a customer places an order, there are a number of rules that come into play, a number of business rules. For example, what was the list price of this particular product? What is the sale price? If there are any discounts, if the customer is a part of a specific group like an Amazon Prime, so he gets an additional discount. A lot of those rules come into play. Then
I'm assuming promotions as well.
Correct. Promotions, campaigns, all of that comes into play. And based on those rules, it is determined that what is the final price that should be charged to the customer. So yeah, I mean, CPQ and Commerce Cloud don't interact directly, but price book is kind of the common entity which binds them together.
Okay. And if somebody doesn't, so then then that statement cannot be true, right? When somebody says, "Oh, I don't use CPQ, I only use Commerce Cloud."
Yeah, so they need not use CPQ. They might be using something else for their price books and
Standard
price.
Salesforce price books.
No, so they could be using any pricing engine. So in e-commerce world, there are a number of pricing engines. So these are basically engines like all they would do is store your product information and your pricing information. So anytime that your e-commerce portal needs to find out the price for that product, they would actually hit a API call to that pricing engine and it would return the pricing information. Again, CPQ does that, but CPQ does a lot of other things beyond just the price retrieval.
Could you show that setup screen where I'm assuming that in that setup screen, you could just pick some of the leading pricing engines?
I can show you what a price book looks like. Just give me one moment.
Sorry, I'm just a little curious, but if it's too
absolutely
specific, we can go to other questions.
No, that's fine. So if I come to merchant tools, and if I go to products and catalogs, and if I come to price books, so let's actually look at, let me look at a USD price, and let me look at a sale price. So for example, if I want to look at what are the price definitions here, again, if I click find here, it will show me all the products that have been priced for that specific price book. So for example, again, there are a lot of information here. It's fairly complex, and pricing in general is complex. So there are a lot of things I can do. I can actually add a new price table. I can discount. I can choose whether the pricing is for a specific period or whether that's continuous, and a lot of other rules that I can actually have here as well.
So basically, in one screen, you can change the pricing for all the products which you want. Correct. To, right?
Correct.
And the category wise, right?
Correct.
Or sales price, as the case may be. Okay.
Yes.
And on a related, on the related side, how you do manage the inventory? So inventory is also another kind of additional add-on, or how does that work?
Yeah. So inventory is typically external. So if I show you the inventory here, it would show me. So it would basically be fetching it from another external system, which is typically what we call as an inventory management system, and then it would store that information here. So for example, if I go to inventory list for Super Electronics, and if I go to records, this would show me all the inventory records of the products with their corresponding inventory right now. So
what are the common inventory? Typically Oracles and SAPs of the world, or what's the most common you come across, Gaurav?
SAP for sure, but again, it's kind of a Salesforce product. So whenever we solution a B2C commerce solution, and when in general, I mean, when we talk about Salesforce, anything, whenever you talk about SAP or Oracle, we say that's the dark side. So we try and stay away from those solutions. So yeah,
so I mean, what do you position?
It really depends on the use case. I mean, there are a lot of smaller players as well in terms of inventory management solutions.
Okay.
I would not want to name a specific one, but yeah, several of them. I mean, Bazaar Voice has been doing inventory. There is, there's one. Yeah, again, a lot of them. I mean, if
got it.
Again,
that one word is also enough. Yeah. So basically, you position something which is not native Salesforce. It's an integration, right?
Yeah. And again, not
Salesforce themselves don't have even a stretch offering. They don't have a stretch offering for managing product inventories.
You could say that, and I mean, yes and no. The reason is that the inventory information is available right here. The problem is that if you want to update this in real time, that is the big issue. So for example, rather than fetching this inventory information from an external system versus updating it locally within Demandware, that is where the challenge comes in. So inventory management systems, typically, they are built to sync data in real time as well as scheduled intervals. Versus if you were to do it natively within Salesforce, within B2C commerce, that can be fairly tricky.
Got it.
So again, if I think there was a question, so just to, I think it was from somebody, yeah. So just to show what looks like in terms of inventory, whether a particular product is perpetual. Perpetual means it's available for life. What is a typical turnover? What is the order? What is the stock level? ATS is availability to sell. And again, I can go and edit inventory manually here as well.
So basically, you'll be editing one at a time, the record, right?
Yeah. So ideally, as I said, if I use an external inventory management system, that inventory management system will take care of updating these records automatically. I would not have to do it manually here.
Yeah, basically, typically, I guess what the inventory management system would be, you have one system, and because they might be selling on multiple portals, they might be selling on this particular website and some on Amazon, some on like eBay or whatever it is. So the management, I guess, a centralized inventory is getting updated automatically, and
correct.
I believe this is synced with the Salesforce, so you always have real-time inventory, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I guess Pranav, I guess we can use your tool over here too, which should.
No, I wasn't looking there, but yeah, no, I don't think we can also. This is demand variant of the day, so.
Okay, I see one more question on the chat, which I'll want to take. So there's a question from Dodi. To what degree can cache be used out of the box, and how common is it? How common is it for a site need customization? Oh, sorry, I think the question is not related to cache. So to what degree can I think B2C commerce be used out of the box? Yeah, so this is your starting point. Typically this particular, sorry, not this. This is your starting point in terms of what you get. This is what we also call as a seed project. So you don't need to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel, and then you would typically need to customize it fairly heavily. But again, the best part is a lot of it can be done without code through configuration from the business manager interface. You would typically be able to configure pretty much everything that's there on this page through the business manager interface. But yeah, I mean, for advanced functionality, you will need to write code. There is one more thing, again, from an architectural perspective, is similar to App Exchange that Salesforce has. Here we have something which we call as a link marketplace. Idea is similar. Anytime you need any custom functionality which is not available as part of the core platform, you come to the Commerce Cloud Marketplace, and then you basically search for what exactly you're looking for. So for example, inventory, if I want to see, I don't think they list it as a category here. So for example, order management is something which is closer to inventory. So if I do order management, this would show me a number of providers, and typically most of the top providers would build a cartridge there. So for example, if I want to do an integration with CloudSense, I could use their cartridge. This would have all the documentation of how I can integrate with them, and then I can do that. Fujitsu, a lot of them. So again, based on what you want to do, if something is not there in the core product before you actually go about building it, just check here to make sure that if somebody has already built it and if you can use it. A lot of these are free, but some of them are paid as well. For example, Apple Pay, again, a very common payment mechanism. And you can view a full list here as well.
And Gaurav, what's the typical implementation time period? I know based on the size of the whole product range and all, but typically from how the life cycle works.
Yeah, so it varies. I mean, it varies. Implementation could be as small as 12 weeks to get a site up and running, and it could be as large as 2 years. If I were to show you a site which is
Did you say 12 weeks on the short side?
Yes.
12?
Yes. So if I were
I guess all the logo designing is I guess 2 to 3 months, right? That's 12 weeks, about 3-month time period, right? So
correct, yes. So if I were to go to this site, which is Disney Store, again, this is a implementation for Shop Disney. Yeah. So this is a B2C commerce implementation, and one of the most complex implementations. This took several months, and again, a lot of integrations, a lot of architectural challenges. So yeah, this was one of the more complex implementations. Again, I believe this was a multi-year project, phased out based on some of the complexities that they had. So again, it all depends on the use case, the volume, the number of integrations, a lot of considerations that come into play when you are sizing your project.
I have a question,
Sure.
Gaurav. So I have worked for a couple of organizations, and my current employer we have a need for CPQ because the deals are usually B2B and like $1 million deals also. So they need codes to be revised until a final code can be approved and agreed upon. So there's a need for CPQ. But then I can see that in a B2C commerce, why CPQ can be laminated because there is no quotation going on.
Right.
But then I'm trying to draw some parallels between some of the features of CPQ and something that can be needed in a B2C commerce, such as a bundle. Do you know if this has the capability to make like product bundles or offer multiple products?
Yeah, you can do that as well. So you can do bundles, you can create options, you can create features. All of that is available. Obviously, the terminology differs a little bit, but yeah, you can do all of that.
Okay, that's great. Also, we just saw a demo of products, how they can be configured. So when this is added on top of the core sales cloud, which has products as well, how do we maintain products in both, or?
No, so you would typically maintain the information in one place, and that's again a great question. So we have something which we call as B2C commerce solution kits, and the use case that you're referring to, this is something which is actually becoming very, very common. So if I were to go to B2C commerce solution kits, this is what we call as typical cross-cloud architecture. And if I want to see how Commerce Cloud works with Sales Cloud, actually, let me give you another example. I don't think they are listing sales here, but yeah. So for example, this one is a typical integration of a Commerce Cloud and a Service Cloud. So for example, there was somebody on my e-commerce website, they tried placing an order. The payment went through. The payment failed, but they got debited. So very classical use case of an e-commerce transaction. In this case, what would they do? They would either call up my customer care, or they would log a case on my site. So although they would be logging a case on my site, but a common scenario is I would actually be propagating that case from Commerce Cloud into Service Cloud. So for example, if I were to show you that, and again, you'll be able to find something similar for Sales Cloud as well. But this typically talks about how interaction works from Commerce Cloud, or in general, I mean, from one cloud to another, a typical cross-cloud architecture, and they call it a solution kit. So again, the idea here is similar. The payment failed or something went wrong, and what really happens between the various clouds. So for example, you can see that Shopper is here, they're interacting with Service Cloud, and then there is a certain interaction happening with Commerce Cloud based on the API calls. OCAPI, for reference, is Open Commerce API. It's an open standard around commerce APIs that has been adopted by B2C commerce as well. So yeah, that's how typically you would do. So what this would do is typically it would propagate your case information from Service Cloud to Commerce Cloud. Similarly, for your Sales Cloud scenario, the product information could be synced between Commerce Cloud and Sales Cloud as well.
But then Gaurav, I think to add to Noreen's question, where would it be maintained? They typically wouldn't be two masters, right? So which one would be the bundle master?
Yeah, so it would be Service Cloud for cases, and it would be your Sales Cloud for products. So Commerce Cloud would
So then the
basically.
editing
Mhm.
would be stopped in the Commerce Cloud.
No,
The screen
so
that you showed earlier.
no, so that's a different use case. So here, when you are using Sales Cloud, that's a different scenario. So in that case, you would obviously not go here and edit your products because it doesn't make sense, because your actual product information is not stored here. It is coming from Sales Cloud. So in that case, you would actually go and edit your products in Sales Cloud. This is a scenario where there is no Sales Cloud. Your information is being stored in Commerce Cloud. These are separate worlds.
Oh, so it can be a standalone product.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm confusing myself because I'm thinking, okay, where does Sales Cloud stand? Then where does Commerce Cloud stand? And then where does service come in? Or where does CPQ? I'm just making it too complicated. If it can be a standalone, then that solves a problem. So then it would add, if I suppose create an account on Puma's website, and suppose if they are using the Commerce Cloud, so they add me as an account in the Commerce Cloud?
Correct. It could be either way. I mean, depending on how the site is architected. So and the best part is as a customer, you would actually not know what is happening in the background. So it could be either way. I mean, they could be storing all the information in Salesforce for accounts, contacts, and then the product information could be stored anywhere. But again, it's since that, I mean, you could actually look at it as well. A lot of it is abstracted, but if you want, you can actually see what are the API calls that are going out. So all of that you can also see as well.
So if I were to, I was trying to convince my manager to get Commerce Cloud. Suppose I work for an organization like suppose Yelp that has a B2C kind of a business. No, actually that's a B2 small business. So suppose I work for an organization that has a B2C interaction, and I'm trying to convince my manager to get Commerce Cloud. What would the one product that's one standalone or I want to say feature, not the product, but a feature of Commerce Cloud that, for example, CPQ has quotes, and then the Sales Cloud has accounts and opportunities and contacts and cases too. Service Cloud has cases along with accounts. So what would be one feature of Commerce Cloud that is the strength of Commerce Cloud, I should say?
It's the order and the checkout functionality, I would say. So there is, again, we would be talking some advanced concepts, but in general, e-commerce, now we have what we call as headless commerce. So if I were to define it, the idea here is, let me show you an example. But the idea here is that rather than using a single solution, what you can do is your solution could be made up of multiple systems. And again, this goes back to, I think they had an image here. The idea
so
is
Gaurav,
that,
would you not answer it simply by saying, hey, Noreen, if you need an online shopping experience, you would need Commerce Cloud? Would that not be, because none of the other Salesforce solutions give you an online shopping on a mobile as well as on a device, well, a tablet?
you could do that. I was trying to explain it more from a technology standpoint, that I could actually build hybrid solutions as well. So I could be using SAP in the backend, and I could be using B2C commerce in the front end, or I could be using Magento in the backend, and I could be using. So the idea of headless commerce is that it makes everything very flexible, and everything is basically a layer. So for example, your front end could be anything, your back end could be anything, and everything is interacting on a API architecture. So again, yeah, so if CPQ is quoting, then
Got it.
e-commerce is basically order management, checkout functionality. The overall e-commerce experience is B2C commerce.
Yeah, I think that the challenge is more of if there's a new customer, yes, we can say, like the way we talk about Sales Cloud for salespeople, we could simply say that, yeah, Commerce Cloud is the best fit. But when it comes to a company which is already building their infrastructure, like, you know, let me just say example of Amazon. If they want to change something in their whole ecosystem of this commerce business, then as Gaurav mentioned, integrations play a role. What systems, the headless commerce is playing a big role. If the company is already well established, then to suggest Commerce Cloud, it's all depend on use case. I think the headless commerce is where the Commerce Cloud is, not Commerce Cloud, but the commerce
In general,
systems are going ahead.
that's correct.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
I think Shiba had a question. She had raised her hand, but I couldn't really. Sorry, go
Yeah.
on.
I was interested in the certification part. So to attempt that, we need to have a practice. As you said, this is only learned by practice. So is there any kind of demo org or practice org available
Yes.
to any?
So you need to work for a B2C commerce partner. That is the only way to get a demo org at the moment. Or if you
Oh,
work for one of the big GSIs, they typically are a partner. So you can then raise a request. But other than that, unfortunately, it's currently not possible. Or you need to attend one of the trainings, Trailhead Academy trainings. That will get you a sandbox for about 4 weeks, which should be good enough to clear the certification. But yeah, that's not a sandbox that you'll have for life. So
Or,
That
or
might
you can
change
try.
at the, you said that might change at the end of the year.
that is the plan, but I don't know. With so many
Forward-looking
things.
statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, every
end of the year if they're giving us that, because it's like chicken and egg story. You can't get a job without the certification or training, and you can't get a certification without a job. It's like you don't know which one comes
Yes,
best
they
first.
announced it at Dreamforce last year, and I'll try and see if I can pull out a video of that. It's a Dreamforce session that they had. But yeah, it's in the works. But yeah, it's not been released yet.
Like one of the reason actually is they are off platform. They're not part of Salesforce core.
Correct.
That's the biggest challenge for them. And when I try to look at everything about Salesforce, trying to eager to learn everything, the two parts I can't learn myself, self-learning. One is the marketing cloud, and especially B2C marketing, and B2C commerce cloud. The rest of them you can definitely spin up trailers. I managed to spin up a B2B commerce cloud as well. I managed to go through some few online the Confluence pages, managed to get the package, and managed to get the licenses. The two things: sometimes you find a package online, not for the commerce cloud on the B2C, but on the B2B.
Cloud Trace, yeah.
But getting the user license is very challenging. Not every developer org might not have that. But there are few error and trails. I managed to get the B2B commerce cloud craze package installed in a sandbox, not sandbox, developer edition org. But
Are you
B2C,
referring to the trailheads that offer you some demo or?
No, I think it's a Google using some Google SEO techniques. You can find the links. While Gaurav is mentioning, I'm trying to find where did I manage to install that package. I couldn't find, but as soon as I find, I'll definitely drop an email. Guys, you can install that. The only disadvantage is when the developer or generally has very less space, sending 250 MB or maybe 200 MB. Oh. And when you try to install the Cloud Craze, which is a B2B commerce cloud, to try to run the what you call the data generation, which they already give as scripts, your org will become full and you can't run any application. There are some challenges, but at least you could practice at some level by going through documentation, by going through this developer org. Maybe you could try. I tried to a certain extent, and then I moved on to a few other things before spend time on B2B commerce.
Right.
But
that's
there is
how
a way
I
to
used
get
to
it.
prepare for certification before Trailhead. Like my first certification was more than 5 years ago, and Trailhead was in the making, or at least I wasn't aware of it. So I was just doing Google search. That's how I was going back to to the older days when we were just studying without Trailhead.
Right, older or recent, it's still Google. The Google is
Google is
the king. Yeah.
So hey, another question. Yeah, sorry. Another good question. On the if somebody starting, like I know in Shopify, like same kind of parallel I'm trying to draw there is there are a lot of templates. For example, somebody wants to get started out, right? You create like there's a template for like you're trying to sell this like a wine, so they're kind of jewelry business, so their kind of template is there. Does this like same Commerce Cloud also have something like template that you can start with? Like what does the initial configuration look like when you start with it? Like you have a demo sites, you can play around with it, start configuring it to your site and change your own like a images, logos, and all the stuff and change the content there?
It's the SFRA site that I showed you. So that site
Okay,
that
that's
I
only
showed
one.
you.
Or they have
Yeah.
multiple.
No.
They have multiple versions.
No, that's the
Only
only
one. Okay. And do they have any private people making those kind of templates too, or like they're selling it out, or like I know in Shopify, they have private developers. They have got multiple templates. Like you can buy a template for a couple $100, and you can have different look and feel.
Yeah, a lot of partners do that. But again, I mean, I'm not really sure I would advise that, because you can always do the customizations yourself fairly quickly as well. So, I mean, in the link marketplace, you will find solutions for that as well.
Got it. Okay.
So we are on the top of the hour now. I guess time to close. The time just flew. We got to learn so many new concepts, and it was very interesting to everyone. So I would just thank Gaurav and thanks a lot, and yeah, wish you all a great weekend ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. Great.
Thank you.
Right on our
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.